Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic. That's known classic. This is episode number 2509 and episode number 2403. We have a Hulk trade and some issues of X Factor. Yep, we're pretty much getting the X Factor stuff. Basically, the next segment X Factor will be the start of Peter David's very brief run he had. This first run for X Factor, not the Volume 3 run. I'm discussing already, but yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. First up we have is The Incredible Hulk Visionaries Volume 5 by Peter David, which collect issues 364 to 372 along with annual number 16 for Incredible Hulk. Yep. And here's a fun fact for you with this book. This book gets the book out of the 1980s. Finally. Yep. The first 4 issues in here are known as Countdown. The biggest thing with this one is basically Hulk have a rematch with Madman. This is basically Madman, his big thing he does here. And it's a great storyline. It's basically Countdown to 1. Like, it's an explosion? Not really per se, but it also gets parents by the leader and, well, Fantastic Four also appears here as well. Yeah, then from 368 to 368, 369, it is just a quick little two-parter, like having, okay, let's have Hulk fight Mr. High for 368, and then fight Free of Force 369, and then here's something quite cool. In issues 370 and 371, we have the return of the original Defenders, minus Silver Surfer. Yep. They reunite here for this quick two-parter. All 3 people apparently had died at some point, faked their deaths. Hulk faked his death back in Incredible Hulk 345. Namor apparently died at the conclusion of Lanthor's attacks. And Doctor Strange apparently died at the end of Secret Wars 2. They all faked deaths and all pretty much reunited here. It's an excellent 3-parter. It's a 2-parter. And the last issue of this batch is simply put basically 373-72, which is a return of the Green Hulk. Yep. From what I can tell anyways, we're going to be soon, I guess Peter David's going to be phasing out the Grey Hulk and going back to the Green Hulk. Yep. The annual itself is basically part of the Life Forms crossover. Yes, a crossover that pretty much took up a few other annuals. What annuals were they? The annuals, which of course this is part of. It first up, Punisher annual number 3. Daredevil annual number 6, this annual, and Silver Surfer annual number 3. It's a quick 4-part annual. Mostly just Grey Hulk versus the character known as the Life Form. Who, yeah, he only just appears in the 4 annuals. Like, after this storyline wraps up, he does not appear ever again in comics. Nope. We also have a character from Daredevil, basically makes a guest appearance in here, basically like a brief return. Now, Daredevil is the writing here, obviously, but now we also have backup stories in here. Like, we have You Can Always Get What You Want, written by Bill Meany, Hulk's 10 Best Brawls, Gary Burnham, armor by Howard Champion, Alan Grant. Yes, Alan Grant, the writer of the classic Spider-Man, Batman Shadow of the Bat, with artwork by Dan Reed. The second story features She-Hulk. Yes, She-Hulk. Team up with Louise Mason. This actually, for her previous appearance was in the first annual for Incredible Hulk. Not Incredible Hulk. For Namor. Her next appearance would be Avengers 326. Yep. Then we have Hulk's 10 Best Brawls. Which, of course, basically, yeah. Which is a recap. And now is basically is Doc Samson. Who basically, chronologically, well, appears in like another book per se, but still, yeah. This book itself is really, really good. I've thoroughly enjoyed this one. Yep. Oh, in case you're really curious, though, the issues were released for the time period of October 1989, and the final issue, 372, was released in June of 1990, which means, yes, I'm in the 90s now. Hooray! It's about time. The still the books and they got out of the 80s, but I'm glad Hulk is out of the 80s. I gave this book a 10 out of 10. Alright, next up we actually have is, let's see, here we go. Yeah, we're discussing some issues of X Factor. Yes. What issue of X Factor, you might ask? Why, the last mini issue of the original X Factor. We'll discuss issues 51 to 59, 63, 64, and number 6. Now you're thinking, okay, what's going on? Why are you skipping over issues 66 too? Extinction Agenda. And why not number 5? Days Future Present. Yep. I've discussed that across already in the review. Check out my review for that one. You look at my channel. And also, in the case of Exchange Agenda, yeah, I've discussed this already. Because we're... And this kind of is the end of the original X Factor, because I've also discussed issues 65 to 70 in one of the X-Men Epic collections. I think it was like Mutant Genesis, I believe it was. Yes. So mostly put in these issues, we have X-Factor Return to the Earth since the conclusion of the Judgment Day storyline. Yep. And of course, they have to deal with Sabretooth in these issues. Yep, they do. Oh boy, they do. Oh, here's a little fun fact for you. Despite the several relaunches of X Factor, this is the only issue 51 ever released. 50, there have been 2. One for this volume and volume 3. There has been no other issue 50 release since the last one released back in, I think it was like 2010, I think it was. Where they take on Sabretooth, Caleb, and Apocalypse. It's basically just after Return to Earth. And mostly put a day with Sabretooth for the next few issues. How long per se dealing with X Factor? With Sabretooth with X Factor? I think like 2, maybe 3 issues per se. Yeah, he's only here for 3 issues and he's gone for the book. Yep. Yep. Then we have Colossus, and we of course do a character named Crimson. Yes, this mysterious woman who appears mission 5458 from the group known as the Ravens. Yep, so basically we're dealing with vampires. Psychic vampires. Which you're thinking, wait, isn't there an X-Men character who is like a vampire, but she's not part of this group? Yes, Selene. The Black Queen of the Hellfire Club, who was dead, but now is alive. Yep. And of course, they deal with this group, the Ravens, for pretty much for the next few issues. We also return of Mesmero. Yep. We also with Vera Carter, who actually was an old girlfriend of Hank McCoy. Which of course basically like the last time they encountered each other was back in issue Incredible Hulk. Yeah. That was the last time they saw each other. Well, she of course also appeared in Defenders, but her last time she saw him was back in X-Factor number 8. And after this, Vera only appears 3 times after this. She appears in Mark Comics 59, Mahalo Special 94, and X-Men Years number 2, which I've discussed already. So I've discussed majority of her appearances so far. Is there anything I've not talked about with her? Just one issue more team up. And that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Mesmero. Oh boy. Classic X-Men villain he is. He's been around since X-Men 49. You know, he's the creation of Arnold Drake and Don Heck. You're thinking, Arnold Drake. Like, who did he create for comic besides Mesmero? Well, he created Doom Patrol. Yep, he did. If you're really curious, part of this one issue of X Factor, the last time he appeared, if you don't count his appearance in Classic X-Men, which I think is probably just a reprint of his previous appearance, yes. His last appearance was back in Alpha Flight 43. Just like, I think like just a few years prior to that. Yep. There's also Opal Takaya, who's Opal Tanaka. Yes. She basically was a girlfriend of, well, Iceman's. She, of course, has appeared sporadically over the years. I mean, she appeared initially from 51 up until 65. Yeah, she's in this book for a little while, and then she appeared a little bit in the X-Men, appeared in the Ice Mini series from the 90s. Her most recent appearance actually was in Astonishing X-Men. Yes, because she's part of those group of, let's call them the League of Evil Exes for Iceman, because they have all these various women who dated him over the years, and there's also been joked that he dated Mystique. Well, this was before they retconned he was freaking gay. Yeah. Yep, and then of course basically, well, after issue 58, which basically concludes the whole Raven story arc. Yeah, and then basically we sort of see the brief return of the Right. Yep. Yep, and then by 58, the Ravens are all dead. Yep. And then for issue 59, basically we're just kind of building up. Basically 59, mostly put, the best way to call it, it's a prelude to extinction. That's mostly what it is. But what about 63 and 64, you might ask? 63 is basically, well, X-Factor can take on the Yakuza. Well, the Clan Tozasu version. Yep. And they're here for 2 issues, and mostly put their connection to Iceman's girlfriend. Yep. And, well, oh, I forgot to mention this. Who was the writer of these issues, mostly? Louise Simonson is basically your writer, mostly, for this book. Mm-hmm. Now you might be curious. How long did Louise Simonson write this book for? She wrote for quite some time. Mm-hmm. Yep. She officially led the book with issue 64, so basically all these issues here are basically her run. Yeah, the annual itself was not written by her. Nope, it was not. Yeah, the annual itself was written by Fabian the Seeds, who is part of Part 4 of the Kings of Pain story. That's the first story. Second story is Second First Love, also do with the Killing Stroke. And the last story, Tribute the Third, is written by Peter David. The first story gives the Kings of Pain stuff. Second story is a story on Freedom Force, which kills off a member of a group called Desert Sword, which is a Arabian group. Yep. Who first appeared in the final annual for New Mutants. Yep. And if you're really curious, though, this annual is one of 3 appearances they made over the years. Aside from this one, this actually was their final appearance. They also appeared in the backup story for annual number 15 for Uncanny X-Men. That was pretty much it for them. Tribute Third focused on Mystique, and that's it. Yep. But yeah, that's pretty much in a way the end of an era. Plus also, well, of a couple things. Well, also because, well, this is kind of the end of not only the original X Factor, but also Louise Simonson's run in the book, sadly. Now you might be curious though, who replaced her as the writer of the book, because it was Peter David yet. Nope. Peter David officially goes book until issue 71. Who did 65, you might ask? That was done by Jim Lee, Walt Pacino, who been co-writing the book, and Chris Claremont. And mostly put basically their issues, this is known as the Endgame arc. That took up issues 65 to 68. And this later led into another storyline, the Mirror Island Saga. Yeah, and this pretty much basically led into X Factor 70, which has a great cover here where you have the original team And behind them is their replacement team for In Shadow of the new X Factor group. And Peter David wrote that issue. That was his first issue he wrote. But yeah, basically, like, with issue 71, we have a brand new X Factor team. And I'll be discussing that group, well, with the very next time I'm talking about X Factor. Yep. Final thoughts on Louise Simonson's run. Keeping this woman wrote from issue 6. Yeah, she was issue 6 to 64. She had an absolute great run in the book. Yeah. This one was fantastic. She didn't skip an issue. She was on this book for 6 years. She only wrote 2 annuals. You're thinking, really? Only 2 annuals? And you're like, really? 2 annuals? Yeah, 2 annuals. Yeah, just annuals 3 and 6. Yeah, 3 and 6. Now, who wrote the other annuals? Who wrote who wrote of the first 6? Like, who wrote them? The first annuals were by Bob Layton, who actually was one of the first writers in the book. And number 2, Mary Jo Duffy. And number 3 was the first annual by Louise Simonson. This also was the first of multi-story annuals. She wrote also the first story, second story, third story, Mark Greenwald. And number 4, which discussed that in the previous Comic Corner, that was done by John Byrne. Yep. And number 5, which the annual I skipped over because it discussed Days Future Present. That was done by Louise Simonson. She did this annual, which I believe was her last annual she worked on for the book. And of course, Peter David wrote the backup feature for the book. And then you have annual number 6, the last annual of the feature, the original X Factor. Yep, the very last one. By the way, the cover of this book is done by Mike Mignola. Yep, the creator of Hellboy. But yeah, that's pretty much the original era for X Factor in a nutshell. It's interesting to note the fact that Louise Simonson was not the original writer for the book, per se. No, she took over from Bob Layton. Yeah, Bob Layton was the original writer for this book. And how long was he on the book for? He was on the book for the opening 5 issues of the series. And he did the first annual. So technically, throughout this run for X Factor, the original incarnation of X Factor, where it was a privately owned company. Well, it was basically kind of like a mercenary group that was financed by Angel. And this whole run only had 2 writers, just Bob Layton and Louise Simonson. And that was it. I'm like, wow. I gotta admit, Louise Simonson did a great job with the book. Now, you might be curious though, is there any other book besides this one she did a very lengthy run on besides this very book? Well, she did a pretty on and off run for Power Pack for about 4 years. She wrote almost like the first 40, like almost the entirety of the first 41 issue, with the exception of issue 21, 34, 36, 38, all but 3 issues. Okay. And that was like the only book I could see here she actually had a pretty lengthy number aside from X Factor. Yeah, that was the only one. Only 2 books at Marvel she did it for. What about DC, you might ask? Well, for DC, there was a couple books she had a lengthy run for. One was Steel. She wrote a majority of the first 31 issues, skipping only issues 4, 17 to 20, and 28. And that was it. The only other book she worked on, which she had a pretty lengthy run on it, was Man of Steel. Well, she went on and on for quite a while. She did almost the first 86 issues. Yeah, over the course of a 9-year period. Probably by far her longest book she worked on. Only skipping issues 57, 58, 84, and 84 to 85. Only skipping 3 issues. Yep. So yeah, only about 4 books she's worked on where she had a pretty lengthy run in the book. A lot of the other books she's worked on, usually very short runs per se. There was another super book she worked on. She worked on Man of Tomorrow. She did the last 4 issues of that book, surprisingly. But you might be asking, is she doing comic work nowadays? I believe so. Yes. She's doing some work, but at least she's still working nowadays. Her husband still does work this very days. Matter of fact, her husband recently did an issue of Thor just this year. Yep. But yeah, an absolute great run for X Factor. She did. Louise Simonson, you did an excellent job with this book, and also you gave us possibly one of the greatest villains in X-Men history, Apocalypse. Yes, that is the biggest known character who made his debut during the course of these issues, and she did a great job with it. She also turned our Angel into Archangel. Beast was the first start of this one. He turned back normal, and then during the course of this one, he went back to being the Pharaoh look, which basically she did that. So you could say she had an epic run in the book. Yes, she did. A run that lasted for 6 years, and then she got replaced briefly by Walsh Pacino and Chris and Walsh Pacino. He came in the book. Even though Code did issue 64 to 64, but he left issue 69, and then basically got replaced with says here Larry Stroman, but Peter David was replaced around the book. Yep, Peter David. Mm-hmm. Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much a particular view. Next up is going to be, well, that was part-timer, okay? Next view. Bye.